Welcome back to the Property Now podcast. I'm your host, Matt Alal. We all hear the same barbecue talk. Property always doubles every 10 years, or get into the market at all costs. But the maths doesn't lie. Most people are playing a game they don't understand, using strategies that stopped working in 2010. Today, I'm going to break down the brutal reality of why everyday Australians hit a wall with property investing and how you can actually build a portfolio that replaces your income. So point number one is the dream home delusion. Most investors fail before they even sign a contract because they buy an investment property like they are buying their own home. They fall in love with the nice kitchen, the backyard, or the quiet street. The market doesn't care about your feelings. The market cares about data. If the rental yield is garbage and the infrastructure growth is zero, I don't care how nice the countertops are. It's a liability, not an asset. Buy with a calculator, not a heart. Point number two is the 5-year flinch, a lack of patience. People treat property like crypto. They want a 50% return in 6 months, and when the market dips or interest rates tick up by 1%, they panic. They sell at year 3 and take a loss. Real estate is a get-rich-slow game. The real magic of compounding doesn't even wake up until year 7 or 8. If you can't hold the asset for at least a decade, you have no business buying in the first place. And then the one and done. Point number 3 is the one and done trap. One property will not make you wealthy. At best, it gives you a slightly better retirement in 30 years. But 70% of investors stop at just one. Why? Because they structure their debt the wrong way from cross-collateralized home and bank cut them off. Wealth isn't built by building a property, it's built by building a portfolio. So you need to have a strategy from the very start if you're going to build something over the long term. So going back to point one, digging a little bit deeper on that, probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see with clients of ours that happens the most is buying the property that they love. For example, I have clients who come to me and say, look, we're pretty interested in buying an investment property. However, we're only willing to do that if it's in a suburb that we live in currently. And I dig deeper and I ask them as to why that is the case. And usually it's so that they can drive past it, they can have a look at it, they can keep an eye on the tenants, make sure that they're looking after the house. And really, that's about ego. It's about emotion. It's about wanting to be able to show their friends, oh, hey, we own that investment property and that's a property that we rent out to tenants. Investing is very much the opposite. Now, I'm all for buying a house to live in where you buy it because it provides the lifestyle that you want to enjoy. It's close to your family, it's close to your friends, it's got the beautiful countertops, it's got, a lovely design and a big backyard and all of these things that people want when they're raising a family or they're just enjoying a home for their own enjoyment. When it comes to investing is not done by the color of the curtains, it's done with a calculator. It's based on the numbers of the returns. If we're investing in an area purely because we're emotionally attached to it, it quite often means that we're actually buying an investment property that doesn't really suit the expansion plan of our portfolio. And it's one of the most important reasons as to why an investment strategist or someone who actually knows what they're talking about when it comes to building your portfolio is important to work with. Yes, it will cost you some money up front, but it will make you a lot more money or hopefully save you a lot of money down the track. Because the difference between owning 2 investment properties over the next 30 years compared to maybe 3 or 4 could be $1 million, $2 million, $3 million in outcome, or an extra $3,000 a week in cash flow for the rest of your retirement. Now, if you have to pay someone 5, 10, 15, 20 grand up front, yeah, it might seem like a lot at the start, but providing they can do what they say they're going to do and they can help you build that portfolio to a bigger outcome, then that money is a no-brainer in my opinion. I'll give you some examples. So I had some young clients recently come to me, this is a few years ago because obviously I want to give examples that have played out a while. They bought their own home. It was 2 brothers. They were pretty keen to buy another house in Melbourne. They had a decent borrowing capacity. It was about 600,000. We probably could have got them something pretty decent around the area that they live in. And they were pretty set on this path. They said to me, Matt, they said, look, we're pretty keen to stick to this approach. We've got one property here. It's done pretty well for us. So we want to do it again. We just want to buy here in this area that we know. We don't really want to consider other places. I actually flipped the script for them and said, look, I really think your opportunity is Perth at the moment. And this is the beauty with investing is that you're not stuck to a geographical region. You can go anywhere in the country, essentially. I said, look, here's all of the reasons why I like Perth. It's very affordable. Rental yields are quite strong. We're seeing population growth really start to jump up. And I think that something has to budge. The market's been stagnant for 10 years. We think it's time for this to jump. We obviously can't predict when that's going to happen or if it actually will happen, but we're pretty confident that that will be the case. Sure enough, they actually took the guidance and they went with Perth, and within 18 months the property was built, being tenanted at over a 6% rental yield, and they'd made over 150,000, potentially even 200,000 now in instant equity. Now that compared to where they would have bought, which would have been a 3.5% rental yield and probably a loss, as in the value of the property that they were looking at buying has actually gone down, which does happen sometimes. They're now in a position when they can get another property because their borrowing capacity is supported by the strong rental yield on the investment property, and they've got the foundation via way of capital growth to leverage that into a third property. Now, if they had taken the original path, they wouldn't be in a position to acquire a third property. I would think that long term, that outcome is going to be a lot better for them now because they might have 5 investment properties as opposed to 2 if they had taken the original path. So please, 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 please do not make decisions when it comes to investing on an emotional standpoint because it won't help you. It's not an emotional thing. This is like running a business. It's a business decision. It's a logical decision, and we need to apply a lot of research, a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge when it comes to acquiring rental or investment properties. So back yourself by working with a professional. If it's not us, you look at people that have got good reputations within the industry and that you feel will do a great job and the right thing by you when it comes to investing. So the second point, digging deeper on this, the 5-year flinch, I think it was Warren Buffett who said something along the lines of becoming rich is the process of the impatient handing over the wealth to the patient. So essentially what he's trying to say is that wealth is created over a long period of time. It's rare, and things are changing slightly in the way that we live or the world that we live now. But historically it's been rare for young people to have built a considerable amount of wealth because they just haven't had the time to be able to build what it is that they need to build. They haven't had the chance to make as many mistakes as someone who's been in the game for 30 years. And mistakes are quite often where you actually do learn what you need to do differently so that you can grow. So, building wealth is not a quick thing, and there's different levels of building wealth. But the one I'm talking about here, the 5-year flinch, is that people panic. People tend to follow the herd. Like another saying that I really like is be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy. So if the market's dropping off, you don't lose any money until you sell a property. So don't get attached to the emotional side of things again, digging on from point 1, because the emotional side will not help you. It's a logical thing. You only lose money in property when you sell. If the value of your portfolio has gone down, that's okay. You haven't lost anything because you haven't sold anything. So the longer that you hold, and look, I am an advocate for selling property sometimes, but I think for the majority, holding onto property as long as you can and never really selling unless you're planning your exit, your retirement, those kind of things, you don't really need to do it. I'll share a tip with you. One of the good things with having property is that banks will lend very aggressively against the value of them because they're confident that they'll increase. And one of the key ways that wealthy actually don't pay as much taxes as the poor is that they use borrowings to live off. Borrowing at an interest rate of 6% is much more affordable than paying 38% tax on income that you earn. When you have a property portfolio that is worth $2 million and the value of the mortgages or the debt that you have applied to that portfolio is $1 million, then you have about $800,000 in usable equity there. So technically, I wouldn't do this, but I'm just saying technically, I wouldn't do it when it's at that value. You can borrow against that usable equity and use that money to live off. Stop working and only pay 6%, 7%, 5% interest, depending on what the rates are at the time. I'm not advising to do that, but you can get where I'm going with this. And the beauty of having a portfolio for a longer period of time is that you get that ability to provide a lot more leverage to expand into more assets. One property is never going to make you rich, and that's actually the next point that I'm going to dig into. It's about building a compounding portfolio over a long period of time that builds success. So hang in there, play the long game, think in terms of decades, not in terms of years. The rich think in terms of decades. I've spoken about that on my social media page in the past. We want to think really long term, generational type stuff. Be the person that builds for your future grandkids, so on and so forth. So long term, don't panic. Don't follow the herd. And if you do have that investment advisor there to talk to with us, with Buyfair Property Group, when you work with us, you get a property expert for life. So you can go to them and say, hey, I need help. What do you think I do here? Okay, and that's very valuable. So point 3 is the one and done trap. There's only about 6% of Australians own an investment property, and only about 5% of those people actually go and buy another investment property. So what this tells me is that you're not acquiring enough. Some people buy a property, they have their family home Family home is a liability, by the way. It's not an asset, in my opinion. It can be used to acquire assets, but the raw nature of family home is that it's a liability because it takes money out of your pocket. It's not putting money into your pocket. So they might have one property. They might then go and get an investment, which has done quite well. And then they rest on their laurels and say, no, we're not going to invest in anymore. We don't want to take any more risk. We're just going to sit on that and be as comfortable as possible. Now, once again, this comes down to strategy. This comes down to formula. There's a blueprint to this. Why do some people, I think it's about 2% of the world, earn something like 95% of the money? It's because they know how to apply leverage from their foundation into more assets. It's the same with property. One of the key focuses of Buyfair is that we guarantee a 6% rental yield on the majority of our properties that we sell, which means that your cash flow is always being looked after. It's not costing you a lot to hold these properties, which means that you can invest with confidence. So buying one property as an investment is not going to change your life. I don't care how long you've got that property for. Yes, it will make you some money, most likely, but it's that money that it makes you, that allows you to invest into further assets, the real wealth comes from. Another example of this, which is something that we help people with all the time as well, is that, they have superannuation. You are allowed to use superannuation to acquire investment properties. There are ways that you can tap into that and potentially buy properties to live in, but that's a story for another day. So using an SMSF to acquire property, you might have enough in super that you can leverage into an investment property. And what that means is instead of having one investment property, you have two investment properties, which over a 10, 20, 30 year period compounds into this unbelievable outcome, which is a lot different to what it would be if you just had the one and done approach like most people do. Once again, having an expert that can teach you how to do this and show you how to, approach this in a safe manner is what that will do for you. That's it for today. I really don't want to go into too much more detail. These 3 points are the biggest things that I see people doing that are costing them greater outcomes in the future. If you have an investment property and you just have one and you have a family home as well, that's unreal. You're in the top 7% in the country, and I think that's really good. Hats off to you. But what I'm trying to say is there are opportunities for you to leverage that and expand even further in a safe environment, providing that you know what you're doing. So I hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll see you next time. Look, if some of this episode stung a little bit, good. That means that you're paying attention. Building wealth in property isn't about luck, it's about math, patience, and doing the opposite of what the panicked herd is doing. If you got value out of today's episode of the Property Now podcast, do me a massive favor and hit the subscribe button and share this link with one friend who's about to make a terrible mistake with their next purchase. Take control of your strategy, and I'll see you in the next episode.